Hello, my name is Megan Maher, and I'm here today to talk about how to write an effective lesson plan. So, all of us, I think, have memories of our K-12 educational and classroom experiences where you remember the one teacher who made you feel so welcomed and so capable of growing as a student that you wanted to go to their class. You wanted to do your homework because you felt like you were doing it correctly and you felt like you were learning about things and connecting with the subject. And then I think we all have that one or maybe a few teachers who made you feel not so welcome or not so capable of, being that productive learner and being that effective, I guess, adult person who can go home and do your work by yourself and feel connected to it and feel okay with it. So as an education student, I've spent quite a bit of time teaching groups of kids and working with students on different things, and I learn a little bit more every day about why certain tactics are effective and why certain tactics aren't. And one of the things that a lot of people don't focus on or realize, I guess, is the different learning styles. As you can see here, there's visual learners, auditory learners, there's reading and writing, so you have to actually do it to feel connected to it, and there's people who need to move around, there's kinesthetic learners. In a group of young people, you're going to have all sorts of that combination. And so to be an effective teacher, to write an effective lesson plan, which I'm here to talk about today, you have to do three things. First, you have to pick your subject carefully. You have to look at your government standards and understand what you're expected and implement your personal styles and skills to make that happen for your students. So second, that leads right into the second point, which is you have to know your students. So take the time to think about and understand who you're going to be teaching and apply different things based on that. And then third, set a lesson objective. So what do you want to accomplish? What would you like your students to accomplish at the end of this? That's what you need to set out ahead of time. And so for step one, on this example lesson plan, you can see there's just a kind of a general government standard, and it basically outlines what kids are supposed to accomplish. So fourth grade history, for example, migration in the United States, kids should be able to use a case study or story about migration within or to the United States that identify push and pull factors. So why do people leave and why do they come and go? And to teach a fourth grader that type of mentality takes a special plan to kind of get them to think that way for the very first time. So after you kind of have selected your state standards, you need to think about there'll be different levels. So if you look at this number, it says 01. That means it is the first of several points that they want that group of young learners to be able to understand. And so this is an introductory lesson. You have to look at how many points are within that lesson and be able to plan it throughout your week. So how much time can we take on different things? It depends on how long it's going to take to get to the end game, which is all the points within the state standard. Once you consider all of that, you need to study before you teach. So for me personally, as I went to teach this specific lesson, or as I would go to teach this specific lesson, I'm going to talk about Ellis Island to a group of fourth graders. And I'm going to tell them what they should and shouldn't be able to do. If I haven't read up on Ellis Island, I guarantee there's going to be a lot of things that make me look inadequate as an educator because, let's be honest, not everybody's going to remember everything they ever learn. But as an educator, making kids feel connected to a subject, just touch up on it. And then so second, knowing your students. You don't understand the learning styles that we talked about. And know your students throughout the year. So if you know certain kids learn visually, certain things need to be shown, certain things need to be heard, etc., you need to come up with a lesson plan that kind of hits on all those bases at the same time, which is the challenge as an educator. And then you need to apply your specific styles and activities to the environment, to the learning styles of the students, to the lesson, and then also be able to get them to work independently as well as collaboratively. So in this sample, for instance, talk about what do you see, what do you think, and what do you wonder. So when you look at this picture, as we zoom out, you'll see, you see some feet, and you don't really know much about them, except looks like everyone's kind of wearing the same type of shoe. Okay. Zoom out a little bit more, and you would show this to a group of kids. Now what do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? And it zooms out more and more so that finally you see the whole picture. And you ask the kids, for example, I want you to write independently what you think. What are you thinking about? What's common between the people in the picture? What's different? Do they look like they're happy? Do they look like they're a little tired? Do they look like they've traveled a long way, etc.? So they write that by themselves and then talk about it as a group, and boom, they've used visual learning. Once they talk about it, they've used auditory learning, and it sort of hits all bases as they work together and in groups. So then you need to set your learning objectives. So once you revisit the state standards and you know your plan to kind of hit all those bases, you should think, what do I want my kids to be able to do by themselves after this? So that's why you need an outline or a framework of your lesson. And there are quite a few, ways to accomplish that. So for instance, some teachers like this method. It's a graph where you kind of know the materials you need, the strategies you have, etc., the steps in doing that. Something like this. Or my personal preference is to just state it. So after today's lesson, you should be able to blank. And to get a child to think about something a certain way, you sort of have to introduce it to them and not plant the seeds in their head, basically, so that they can develop it how they want to see it. And in this method, sometimes kids who maybe don't like to look at a PowerPoint and visualize things and aren't so good at visual learning will benefit more from the talking portion of it. Well, maybe the kids who need that really liked seeing the visual. So, and that's why you have to put a lot of thought into the state standards, check all your bases, and make sure that you're helping every one of your young learners in front of you. So, just to review, at the end of the day, at the end of the school day, you want kids to be able to go home and feel good about themselves and feel good about what they've learned, which is what I want to do as an educator. Overall, what we should all want to do as educators in my field. So once you meet the government needs and you've picked your subject and you know it's a subject you should be teaching, once you know your students throughout the year, you know what they need, you know their different learning styles, you've reviewed and understood the learning styles, and you understand the subject matter needs, and you've set your learning goals, you know your plan. When you pick your subject carefully and open-mindedly to get to know your students, you realize it's not just about the one lesson. It's about helping children understand that they are capable of learning. As an educator, being that medium for them to understand that. So the next step is that they can be productive in their future when they're not in your classroom. Thank you.